Good evening and welcome to this webinar sponsored by the Fellowship Selection Committee of AORN. This is Carol Applegeet. I am fortunate enough to chair this committee this year, and we are happy to welcome you to the program today. We have three speakers today. The first will be our moderator, Joy Dawn Baker. And Joy Dawn has been an active member of AORN for over 47 years. She served on the board of directors and as chair and member of several of our national committees. She was also the editor-in-chief of the AORN Journal, and she helped guide and advance that journal during her tenure. She's an avid author, and she's the co-author of an award-winning book, The ABCs of Author Partnering, and she is one of our inaugural fellows. So I'm going to turn it over to Joy Dawn to take you through the program.
Thank you, Carol, and welcome everybody to the session. We're excited about this opportunity for all of us to come together and hope that we can answer all of your questions during this session. The objectives that you see is what we're going to try to accomplish, but first I want to kind of point out that it's actually in three different areas that we're going to try to focus the session. The first is on the committee and its responsibilities, the applicants and your responsibilities, and then the sponsors and how they support you in this process. So I would like to introduce you to the committee. Each of these folks that are on the list, I'm not going to go down the list, you can read that, but what I want to point out at this group of people have come together to support you in you moving forward in the selection process. So we are very happy to be here tonight, and we want to welcome you. And these are the people that are going to help you do that. As far as the roles and responsibilities related to the FAC, as we call the Fellows Selection Committee, the purpose of that is to select the members for the AORN Fellows. We're also charged to educate the AORN members and sponsors on the fellowship process. That's one of the things that we're doing tonight. We also have the website, and we have detailed guidelines out there that have helped us make that happen. The monitoring and evaluating process is part of what is the next slide. And we want to, Hannah, go to the next slide, please. There you go. What we did was we have listened to you as a committee, and we have taken your feedback and we have made changes. Some of those changes you will hear about tonight, but you'll also see them on the website. You'll see them in the application process. So we want to make things easy for you to understand the process and your journey through this activity that you will be engaged in. In the application process, there's actually three different things that the committee is responsible for doing. And that is to affirm eligibility of the candidate. We all have certain criteria that we must meet. So it's sort of like a tick list. Those have to be accomplished. The second is to review of the application by a subset of the FSC, and that group will review the application in total. There's 3 essays and the CV and the supporting letters from the sponsor and the facility leader. The full committee then reviews and affirms that decision by that committee and makes a final decision, particularly if there is any debate between the subcommittee. Then it moves forward to a final decision. I want to take a moment now to introduce the two speakers that are going to help us with this process tonight. The first, and I'm going to introduce them in the order that they will be speaking. Dr. Stuart Downs currently serves as the nursing administrator of Northside Hospital, Gwinnett in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Excuse me. He is an inaugural fellow of the Cold Iron Senior Nurse Executive Fellowship and now serves as the director of the fellowship program. He is a fellow of ACHE, the American Organization of Nurse Leadership, and most recently inducted as a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing. Stuart is also a member of AORN and has been a part of the American Organization of Nursing Leaders Selection Committee since 2020, getting tongue-tied. Our second speaker is Ms. Charlotte Guglielmi, as the Clinical Manager of Perioperative Education at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. She is a champion for patient safety, focused on high performance teamwork, and the professional development of perioperative nurses. Her career has been diverse, practicing as a clinician, manager, educator, and administrator. Charlotte is a nationally recognized speaker, author, and consultant, having published and presented to numerous international, national, and local groups. She has served as a president of both AORN and the AORN Foundation. She received several AORN awards, including the President's Award, the Award for Excellence, and she is also an inaugural fellow of the AORN. Stuart, all yours.
Well, thank you, Dr. Baker, and good evening, everyone. Thanks to each of you who have taken time out of your evening, your afternoon to join us to learn more about becoming a fellow in the AORN. And it's exciting to see that so many of you are interested in this. That's always, great to know that we have people who are really advancing perioperative nursing across the globe, and we're very excited about that. So we hope that this afternoon we will provide you with some insights that will help start you on your way toward your fellowship journey. For the next little bit, I want to focus specifically on information surrounding the applicant and the applicant's application. So with that, let's get started. There are four main objectives for the applicant and your application that we want to cover in this particular section. One, we want to define fellowship for you so that everyone has a very clear understanding of where we're coming from in terms of what a fellowship is as the fellow selection committee. We want to discuss the fellowship processes and key elements to ensure that each applicant will be successful in an application with their application. Next, we want to discuss the partnership, because that is what it truly is, a partnership between the applicant, the sponsor, and a leader within that knows that applicant. And then lastly, want to focus for you on a timeline so that we are successful in meeting those deadlines for your application. Next slide. All right, so you have made the decision to apply for fellowship, either yes or no, and hopefully that response is going to be yes. And so as Joy Dunn mentioned, we did take feedback from applicants last year in the last cycle, and we have made some revisions here. So I want to focus for you for the next little bit on the eligibility criteria that must be met before an application is even considered. Obviously, first and foremost, the applicant must hold an unrestricted and active license to practice registered nursing at the time of application. Secondly, the applicant must be an active member of AORN at the time of application, and fellows must maintain active membership in AORN in order to renew their fellowship status on an ongoing basis. Third, that nursing degree is paramount. So you must hold a master's degree or higher, but a minimum of one of your degrees or the applicant's degrees must be in nursing. A BSN, an MSN, a DNP, a PhD, DSC, whatever it may be, one of those advanced degrees or one of those degrees, period, must be in nursing. Here's the change we made in terms of professional board certification, in that the applicant must hold a nationally recognized current or emeritus status certification in nursing. This represented a change over last cycle and is due to the fact that perioperative nurses truly hold or could hold a myriad of certifications that may affect perioperative nursing, such as certifications in informatics or leadership, So certified nurse is paramount, but it doesn't only have to be a CNOR. It could be any certification as long as it represents nursing. And then finally, the applicant must have made significant contributions to professional nursing and to the association. The advancement of perioperative nursing should be the focus, and obviously the focus must be surrounding the mission, vision, and values of the organization. So what is a fellowship? Let's get on the same page here with this. And we categorize a fellowship into three distinct criteria. One, we know that it's a voluntary honorary designation. Secondly, it is bestowed by professional societies to individuals who are members of those societies who meet stringent criteria. And three, it acknowledges outstanding achievement or leadership within one's professional society as well. So that is how we define a fellowship. Now, specific to AORN and what a fellow of AORN, or as we call of FAORN, three distinct criteria must be met. One, contribution; two, sustainability; and three, evaluation. So no doubt your journey to becoming a fellow in AORN began years ago. Your impressive work, maybe has advanced perioperative nursing practice on many fronts. But when you think about the fellowship and what it means to be a fellow in AORN, one, the contribution must be ever more prevalent in your narratives and in your writing and in your work, so that the fellow status is granted to those who are recognized as perioperative nurse leaders who have made significant and ongoing contributions to the perioperative profession and to AORN. You'll notice significant and ongoing contributions is bolded here. That is important. Please note that. Number two, the applicant must demonstrate a commitment to practice that goes beyond your local work, beyond your local organization. Yes, we get outcomes in our professional settings where we work day to day, but when we talk about a sustainable impact, it must be beyond the local setting so that the impact is broad in nature and on perioperative patient care and perioperative patient practice across the country. And then thirdly, the applicant must demonstrate that their education and training, their professional qualifications, and again, their contributions to the perioperative profession have passed rigorous evaluations, and they are consistent with the high standards that are established by AORN. All right, let's talk a little bit about the application and how to prepare for that. You've heard me mention the word contribution several times here, and I want to underscore this more than ever. When we talk about your contributions, we're talking about two main components here: significant impact and measurable effect. Significant impact and measurable effect. So what do we mean when we mention the term significant impact? One, there must be significant or specific evidence of outstanding contributions to perioperative nursing at the state level, the regional, the national, the international level. That evidence must be profound, and it must be across all of perioperative nursing in one of those distinct areas. It must be consistent, outstanding contributions to AORN and perioperative nursing over time. In other words, innovative new practices, textbooks, policies, things of that nature that have impacted the practice of perioperative nursing over time. The dissemination of that work is of paramount importance. That work must be disseminated throughout. And keep in mind, we'll talk a little bit about this as well, but when you start writing your narrative around this, it's limited to 2,500 characters. So we want to put that out there now and underscore that more than ever, 2,500 characters. So your writings and your narratives must be succinct, and they must demonstrate that significant impact. Now, what does it mean when we say measurable effect? Well, one, it must be quantifiable. What are the improved patient outcomes that are measurable in terms of your work? What was there a cost reduction that could be quantified? Was there an increase in patient satisfaction or employee engagement, employee satisfaction? Was the adoption of evidence-based practice or research and innovations in nursing that guide changes in clinical practice, is that evident in one of the 4 big buckets that you will write into, and we'll talk about those in just a moment, be it leadership, education, research. So how have your practices and your innovations, how were they adopted? By whom were they adopted? How many times were they adopted? Anything that you can do to quantify the measurable effect of your work, your significant impact, and how that is measured is what you want to call out and denote in your narratives. Now, the applicant must adhere to and write to the 3 characteristics that you see on the screen. You will supply the 3 narratives in your application. Remember, I told you about the max character count of 2,500 as part of your essay, but you must demonstrate a commitment to AORN. In other words, how would you describe how your contributions to the association demonstrate a commitment to the mission, vision, and values of AORN? The activities of AORN. Does your narrative describe your contributions to the activities of AORN through your work and participation on committees, on task forces, and other work beyond your local chapter level? Want to make sure, because that's how you really write to significant. That's how you make sure that your contributions are significant and disseminated beyond your local chapter and your local work. And then 3, it must advance the profession. You must clearly demonstrate in your narrative how your work describes the significant contributions in the advancement of perioperative nursing at the state, regional, national level in one of 4 categories: clinical, administrative or leadership, education, and/or research and evidence-based practice. So let's talk about the 4 of those right there. If we could migrate to the next slide. So you'll see the 4 buckets there. What I want to call out to you here is that you must choose one of these. Choose one area, one domain, and write to that domain, be it research or evidence-based practice. Now, I know many of you may have done some work that is contributory to improvement science, be that quality improvement, performance improvement, translational research, improvement systems. If your work is under that category, then you would want to choose research and evidence-based practice as the domain for writing your narrative. I do want to make one other point here, though, not to be misunderstood. Education, clinical practice, and administrative or leadership could also have, your work may also demonstrate or have included research that you have done in one of those buckets. You can still include your research or the outcomes of your research in one of these other 3 domains as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be included in the research or EBP domain. You could certainly include the outcomes of your research in one of the other 3 buckets as well. Let's talk about the CV. Remember, I've mentioned that the entire package of your application includes the narratives that must be supported by your CV. So you'll want to review your CV, which is a 20-page limit here in 11-point font. That's the smallest that will be accepted, to confirm that it demonstrates and reinforces your narrative statements. All right. And so I know for many of us, myself included, when I went through some of my fellowship applications, it's very hard sometimes determining what to leave in your CV and what to take out. You want to make sure that your CV includes your education, your work history, and your contributions, but your contributions that are specific and that complement your narratives. Underscore that again. Make sure that your CV supports the contributions of whatever domain you're going to write to. Make sure it supports those narratives. All right. And then want to just reinforce for you the timeline. Applications open July 1st at 7 a.m. Mountain Time, and they close September 15th at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. And then our fellow selection committee will review all of the applications. Our deadline is by the end of October, and then the 2024 class of fellows will be notified by the end of November. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Charlotte Guglielmi.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We heard and you told us, and we listened to the fact that we wanted to make sure that people understood both the role of the applicant and the role of the sponsor as we move through the process of getting ready to submit your fellowship application. So my section of the presentation is going to focus on the role of the sponsor. And you know, we're all perioperative nurses and we all practice in team environments. So we all really understand the fact that shared mental model is really important. And that's going to be one of the first things you do as you begin to partner as applicant and sponsor. So the most important thing is here is you want to contact your sponsor early. Don't wait till the first week of September to start this work. Start this work tomorrow and take time, spread out, but set up a regular way of working together. And you'll figure that out with your personalities as you move through this. Your sponsors' names, their areas of expertise, and the directions on how to connect with their contact information will be found on the AORN website. And you're going to see some changes in the website as you move through this year's process. Share your CV and your essays with each other. And part of that has got to do right from the beginning is to say, this is what I'm thinking and this is what I know. And we want to make sure that you understand that because you're going to have to really craft from that CV your statements and how to work. Your sponsor's letter is going to be incredibly important. So it's really important for the sponsor to understand and you both have the same thoughts about where you excel. You know, you're not on this webinar if you don't excel. And that's the great news because we have so many nurses that are so worthy of fellowship and we're really excited to hopefully spread those numbers. You do have to get a leader's letter and your leader's letter needs to be from a facility employee or a manager or someone who can write about your significant contributions that you have on your work system. Don't wait until late again to ask for this letter. This is a very important letter and it's really got to help tie some of the things we do to our application. And then discuss the partnership, what you both think. You know, it's really important when you work in teams to establish ground rules. And that's something you really should do in the very beginnings of your relationship and be open to two-way conversation about your readiness and ways that you can make it better by talking through things. Sometimes isn't that the way we do our best things is we think of things and then all of a sudden together we come up with yet a whole different way of saying it, but it's the same thing more meaningfully. And that's what we're hoping we see. Again, setting appointments to meet on a regular basis through the process is really critical to success. It helps everybody know what the expectations are and how to make them happen. Next slide, please. Begin now recruiting your sponsor. Don't wait. You want to focus on your CV and your essays, as I said before. You might want to even think about drafting what your vision of your leader letter might be. And again, keep talking to each other. Discuss how each of these two letters is going to amplify the wonderful work that you've done and that you want to share with us. And that will help us clarify your expertise and how to put it together because as you write these letters and these narratives, there is word limits and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next slide. Sponsor you might work with may be working with more than one candidate. So for a sponsor, if somebody invites you to consider being their sponsor, please get back to people quickly so that you can make a decision that you're a good match or you're not a good match or where the relationship should go. It's back and forth. Be open to edits on both sides and challenge edits if you're not quite sure why they're there. That's important as you work through the process. And are we willing to, again, adhere to our timeline? Final decision to submit is not the sponsors. And it's important to understand that the applicant makes the final decision. I'm ready to go, and hits the submit button. Next slide. As we go through this, I think the one downside of our cycles is the fact that with AORN's annual meeting being when it is, we often have to launch busy times during the summertime when people are trying to say, I want to do less or I want to take a break. But as you work through, remember that as you set up your time and your ability to move back and forth and get your work done, so you're not rushed in the last 2 or 3 weeks. That's really important as you move forward. Next slide. Let's focus a bit on the letters. They must be submitted at the time with the application. They can't exceed 2,500 categories with your spaces. That's really important because you'll go there and you'll try to submit them, and all of a sudden you look down and they'll say, you don't have any more space. So keep that in mind as you go through. So watch that. It's hard to take what you think is something wonderful and shrink it down to 2,500 characters. So work on that as you go through it. Your first letters are probably going to far exceed it, but as you get further along, you'll learn how to kind of bring it down to where it needs to be, and make sure that each letter supports you, but in a different way and doesn't say exactly the same thing. With your working with your nurse leaders, offer to write a draft letter for them, because sometimes they know you as a leader, but they don't know you as what you do as a leader for them every day, and how the things that you think are the most meaningful contributes to AORN's mission, vision, and values. So sometimes our leaders need help with that, and those discussions should come together. Again, your letter should include augmenting, expanding, and reinforcing your candidates' narratives, but not to duplicate. Next slide. Sponsor and employment roles. We need to talk about roles. Nurses love to talk about roles. Explore with your candidate what the fellowship means to the candidate, why achieving a fellowship is important to the candidate, and how that all fits into their work environment. When the timeline for working together is critical, don't put yourself in a position where you're really working dead against the deadlines. Make that room there. Review your candidates' narratives and CV, and then, make a decision early, even not at this level before the submission. You're going to make this decision very early on, whether you accept an invitation to sponsor this candidate. Probably should be within the first few conversations you have with that person, looking at the CV, talking to them, and understanding their perspectives on why they believe they should be an AORN fellow. That's really, really important. And sometimes those are hard conversations. Somebody may, well, we are assuming everybody's going to be ready, but you might see somebody with some work with a sponsor who says, maybe you're ready, but maybe you need a little more time to develop this side to make your application really one that everybody says, this is so unbelievable, this person has to be a fellow. So keep that in mind and just be open to that as you go through. This should be a positive experience all the way from the time you ask, the time the sponsor accepts, and yes, please, the time you accept that sponsor and that responsibility to work with you. Next slide. Remember, when you look at this, it's almost like we love algorithms. Nurses love algorithms, and we love these yes and no's. I mean, we see these all the time in things that we do every single day. When you get that, the sponsor really needs to judge, is this candidate or this applicant ready? Yes, go forward and start writing letters and start reviewing letters and reviewing the CV and all of the elements we've talked about. If it's no, Be sure that you offer somebody an invitation to listen to you as you tell them how to advance in the continuum of improvement to become ready in the future. Remember, all of our sponsors are fellows in either AORN or some of the other national ones. We've all lived the experience of what our applicants are going through. And so we're glad to share that with you. Review the criteria, clarify your misunderstandings, and again, focus on your measurable outcomes. So what? Outcomes must go above your local chapter. No, and you know, unfortunately, the fee once you submit is non-referable. So help, ask, talk, be open. Next slide. When you write a letter of support, it's important to remember the size and characters. I said that before. Your opening paragraph should provide a professional connection to your candidate. You should expand the commitment, risk, vision, and values of AORN and why you believe they are a candidate for FAORN. Contributions to the activities of AORN are critically important. Expand on reinforce the candidate for state, national, and or possibly global level, demonstrating of what they've done to contribute to the mission, vision, and value, and to promote perioperative nursing. And how have they made a difference? We ask that all the time. We say that as perioperative nurses, we make a difference in patients' lives. We keep patients safe. Well, everybody can talk about that and work around really kind of massaging that out of what you've done in your career. Expand on the essays, focus on the areas, clinical practice, education, leadership, and research. And if assisted, assist the candidate in which of the 4 areas their contributions really might best fit. Next slide. On the slide, you see some templars of samples of what exemplars might look at. These are just some samples. The website will really give you a little more opportunity to look deeper into sample letters. They are offered to help illustrate what to look for. They're in the guidelines document on the webpage. This year, we spent a tremendous amount of time really focusing on how do we make those guidelines significantly important to our applicants and our sponsors as they do this work, because this is work. Look for professional connection, the diverse elements to perioperative nursing, state, national, and international overtime reinforced contributions, and just keep looking at those kinds of things as you move forward with those statements. Next slide, please. Share your letter as a sponsor with your candidate. Talk about the possible edits you might want to make in it. Finalize them. Make sure you're coming to consensus about some of that, so you're really comfortable in writing that letter for your candidate, and your applicant is comfortable accepting what you think needs to go into that as an experienced sponsor. Provide the signed letter to your candidate in a PFD or Word format, and they will upload that letter into the application. So let's look again at the factors that you need to be aware of as you get ready to hit the submit button. Incomplete applications are not considered, so make sure they're complete. Narratives need to have, and the letters are considered. Together they create that creative vision of who you are as a candidate and why you should be an AORN fellow. Be sure to avoid lack of evidence that if there's a weak connection between the sponsor letter and the leader letter to the applicant. Make sure that measurable, sustainable outcomes are articulated in the letters, and don't have inconsistencies between the CV, the applicant's narrative. Unfortunately, if you don't pay the fee, your application won't be accepted. Next letters. I think we've said this several times, but we'll say it just once more. You know, it's like when you're teaching new nurses, tell them once, tell them twice, tell them 2 times, tell them 3 times. Work as a team, start early, review timely, and revise often. Be ready for that. Update the CV. The CV, people often don't understand, is a lot of work. It's a lot, there's a lot of detail in making sure it's got the right format and all of the elements you need to have it to provide support and really show off all the work you've done. And talk about your innovations, your contributions, all of the things you did that makes you somebody that we want to have as an AORN fellow. Next application. So applications open July 1st, 7 a.m. Mountain Time. They close September 15th at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. We will begin our committee review in October and finish it by the end of October. And fellows will be notified sometime by the end of November as we move forward with this process. Next slide. Well, first of all, we want to thank you for your time this evening. I think we're well enough ahead that we have plenty of time to take your questions. We hope that the information we gave you tonight is going to help you get started and be excited about the opportunity. And we also hope that some of the changes we made, you'll find this year make the fellowship process more easier to navigate than what we've heard in the past. And with this, I'm going to turn it back to Joy Dawn.
Thank you. We've had several comments and questions in the chat. And I think between Carol and I, we've been trying to answer those. However, please let us know if you do have a question. My belief is that Ursula, can people raise their hands, or how is that done? You can certainly put it in the chat. We are monitoring the chat.
Yes, if we want them to speak, they can raise their hand and I can send a request to speak.
All right. Well, certainly let us know if you have any other questions. We'd love to try to have a conversation with you about this now. Excuse me. So, it looks like Deborah.
Hi, this is Deborah Calendar. I was wondering, like, for the contribution to AORN or just the perioperative community, is there a time frame as to like a 5-year time frame for your contribution, or could you do your lifetime contribution based on when you entered into the AORN environment as a member?
Charlotte or Stuart or even Rod, any of you would like to respond to that one? I'll let you.
So this is Carol.
Yep.
There
Okay.
isn't any stated limit on it. Some organizations require it to be within the last 10 years. We have not put that stipulation on it. I would suggest that if it was 20 years ago, you might need to demonstrate how it still is impactful. So maybe you did some research 20 years ago that is still being cited in the literature, or that someone else took and expanded on. But there isn't a time limit. Deborah, does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Just to add to that, this is Stuart. I think what we had decided as a committee was that it must be significant and the word ongoing. If that helps add a little clarity.
Thank you so much.
Richard, then Jerry.
Thank you so much. One, I'm super excited to hear my colleague Deb on the line, and it really made my evening, as well as, you know, just the opportunity in the webinar has been great. Thank you for quickly answering the questions. Just a specific point I want to get to. Sponsorship must be from an AORN member who is either FAORN or AAN, correct? It can't be from somebody outside the organization who's a member of AAN.
That is correct. They must be an AORN member, and they must be a fellow either in in AORN or the Academy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Deb, it's great to hear your voice.
Same to you.
Now, Richard, if you go look on the website and it's down there, you'll see the list of potential sponsors that have agreed to sponsor candidates. And as Charlotte said, their name and their email address is there for you to contact them.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Terri?
Yes, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you all for the information. It makes me so excited, especially on the changes on eligibility. But I just wanted to hear it again. Can you confirm with me or with us if the 5 years minimum membership requirement is no longer needed for this time?
Carol, you want to respond to that?
So that is correct. After the forum, I believe it was the forum at Expo, the discussion came up about consistent membership. And I think it had to do with the 25-year plaques. That's really what got it started. But the committee then started to think about what happens if I just forgot to pay my dues and my lapse was only 1 day or 1 week or a month. And so the committee said, as long as you're an active member, when you apply, and knowing, as Stuart said, that you must remain an active member in order to renew your fellowship, we felt that that change was appropriate.
That is awesome. Yeah, I lapsed my membership for 2 days or a day when I moved to California, and I was disqualified because of that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Natalie?
This change was meant for people just like you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Terri. Natalie?
Yes, I just wanted to first of all thank you for this wonderful, wonderful information. This has been very, very beneficial for us. I also wanted to ask, what is the application fee?
That's $300 is the application fee, and then every other year you will pay, if you are accepted as a fellow, you will pay $250 to retain that credential.
Okay. Okay.
That
Great.
is also separate from your membership. So
Okay.
It's two different things.
Okay, great. Thank you for the information.
You bet. You got another question, Natalie?
No, I was trying to lower my hand.
Okay, I understand that.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions tonight? Carol, would you like to,
Well,
anything
this,
else?
I would just like to thank you all for joining us on the call. And I would point out to you the thing that's there on your screen. The committee has worked exceedingly hard this year to improve the application process and improve the information that we provide to potential fellows. So look at the website, look for the sponsors, look for the guideline. It's really an informational guide. There are a lot of examples in there of how to write your exemplars, and there's an example of a CV. So take the time, get well acquainted with it. The email for us, aornfellows@aorn.org. You can send a question to us and one of us will get back to you. But we're looking forward to a very successful year, and we really do appreciate you all being on this call with us. Jordan, you want to close?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for participation, Stuart, Charlotte for speaking, and for the entire committee that was present here tonight to help with this, and wish each one of you the best and be extremely successful, diligent in your work. Make sure that you are very focused in what you put together and work as a team with your facility leader and your sponsor. And you have a good night.
Night. Thank you.